Hello, and welcome to Queued Up Mobility. I'm Rod Alberts, Executive Director of the North American International Auto Show. As we continue to work through this pandemic, we're eager to see the early success this online platform is having, bringing together OEMs, suppliers, and various NAS partners with media and analysts from around the world. Until we can see you again in person, Queued Up Mobility will continue to keep you informed. As a reminder, during this discussion, if you have any questions for our presenters, simply go to slido.com, enter our code NAIS-EPM, and your question will be sent to the panel. Now let's turn our focus to today's panel. As the automotive space transforms its focus from RPM to EPM, or experience per mile, it has become increasingly important for the industry's leaders to focus their efforts on the in-car consumer experience. In this session, we'll be joined by 4 leading experts from the Experience Per Mile Advisory Council, who will discuss what it takes to design experiences that will unveil a new era of smart mobility. I'm really excited about this conversation as we hear from a wide range of perspectives across the automotive ecosystem, and more importantly, how different companies collaborate to enrich the experience for the end consumer. I'd now like to invite the moderator of this virtual panel, Leslie Allen, Managing Editor and Executive Producer at Automotive News, to kick off this fascinating discussion.
Thank you so much, Rod, and welcome everybody. As Rod mentioned, there's significant discussion across industries about creating dynamic experiences. Every company wants to be experience-led. But what does that really mean for mobility? The answer can be overwhelmingly complicated as it involves considerations for safety, infrastructure, policy, etc. Our discussion will drill down beyond buzzwords into what we really mean by a mobility experience, why this becomes critical for the industry, and what it takes to make one. Once again, everybody, I'm Leslie Allen. One of my premium jobs at Automotive News is to edit Shift magazine, and that's Automotive News' special publication focused on the future of transportation. Like many of you, what excites me is uncovering how the next great innovation in mobility will drive a meaningful, tangible impact for all of us consumers. I'm excited to unpack that topic today. Joining me is a dynamic panel of automotive industry experts, from the suppliers creating the foundation of our automotive experience to OEMs and technology companies bringing together the technologies that will make this happen. Today's panel will explore how these groups work collaboratively to create the next great experience innovation in mobility. Joining us today is Nick Parrotta, Chief Digital and Information Officer for Harman, May Russell, CIO of Commercial Solutions and Lead for Emerging Technologies at Ford, Bill Foy, Head of Global Automotive for Amazon Web Services, and Charity Rumery, Head of Automotive and Industrial for HERE Technologies. Welcome, everybody. To kick things off, it's good to see you guys. To kick things off, I'd love to set a foundation by understanding what we mean and what we don't mean by experience. Nick, I'd love to kick things off with you. Harman has been discussing the critical role of experiences for automotive OEMs to provide to consumers for some time now. Why is this so important to Harman?
Well, first, before I answer, Leslie, it's great to be with you and my esteemed panelists, as well as being part of the NAIAS discussion. I'm thrilled and excited to be here to talk about what's really important to me and to Harman. With respect to experiences, we have 30,000 employees across the world that have a passion and a purpose to design and deliver connected experiences, whether that's in the home, on the go, in the car, or at the workplace. We're very committed to driving unique, personalized, frictionless, and integrated experiences that is seamless from the home to the car. And what we're really excited about is our ability to do that on a robust platform. When you look at how we bring together the digital cockpit or ADAS, telematics, cloud-based app services, along with our premium car audio brands like Harman Kardon and Bang & Olufsen, Mark Levinson, and Revel, We believe bringing all of these components together can deliver a very unique and personalized experience for the end user, whether that is really looking at entertainment or social connections, health and well-being, or even a workforce on wheels. We believe that we can bring some immersive experiences that are highly personalized through these technologies that we are able to integrate together, and really putting the consumer in the consumer experience at the center of everything we do.
Well, that's terrific. Um, why don't we get the discussion going? May, I'd like to go to you next. You lead development of various technologies at Ford across commercial mobility, telematics, and digital services. As you work on all of these fronts, how do you think about the experience?
Yes, thanks for the question, Leslie. First and foremost, thank you to Experiences by the Mile, the North American Auto Show, and you, Leslie, for having me here today to talk about my favorite topic, which is customer experience. Just a little anecdotal story. I have a 8-year-old at home, a son, and a couple of nights ago, I tried to do movie night. So, we're not going to movie theaters, so I rent a movie, we sit on the sofa, and we hit play. And he says, stop, stop, stop. I said, what's wrong? He goes, the experience is not complete. And I said, what do you mean by that? He said, the lights are turned on. There's no popcorn. You're on your cell phone. It's not a movie experience. And so we quickly adapted and, we shifted all those things. And he said he gave it a 9 out of 10 in terms of experience. So the number of times I hear from my kids, my 8 and my 11-year-old, the word experience, probably multiple times throughout the day. They identify with experiences. They say, I take them somewhere, they come back and they say, the experience was so-so. The food was good, the seating was okay, the experience was so-so. And so what we're finding out is that consumers of all demographics are really experiential focused now more than ever. Consumers are less price sensitive, especially about things that impact their lifestyle, but they are more sensitive towards the experience it provides. So us being an automaker at Ford, this is highly relevant for us. We produce probably the second most expensive purchase a consumer will make. Additionally, that consumer may buy a vehicle from us once every 5 to 7 years, but they're in our vehicle, probably an average of 1 to 2 hours a day pre-COVID when people were commuting, but nonetheless. So providing an in and out of vehicle experience to the customer, a frictionless journey, is absolutely critical. People buy experiences at all price points. This is really facilitated for us by the rise of the Internet of Things. So our ability to put modems in our vehicles and be able to get data from our vehicles and push data to our vehicle has really opened up a huge opportunity in terms of how we interact with our retail customers. So you and I that just buy 1 or 2 cars, our commercial customers that buy thousands of cars, our city customers, our governmental customers. So how do we create those digital products and experiences, which we have done, and cater it towards each of those personas to serve them in the vehicle, out of the vehicle, before they enter the vehicle, in their journey as they're parking, to manage the safety of their drivers, the uptime of their fleet in all aspects. That is our mission, is to be a trusted mobility company providing these end-to-end experiences.
Bring in Bill Foy now. Bill, I was wondering, in your work as a global automotive leader at AWS, I imagine you have a pulse on how digital services can impact or even transform automotive experiences. In your view, what is the most important thing to consider when creating that experience-led innovation?
Thanks, Leslie. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Hey, the first thing, I'm going to just piggyback on what Nick and May said, because it's really a pillar of Amazon and AWS, and it's all about the customer. So having a customer-obsessed organization is key. So understanding clearly what are the pain points and the challenges of the customer, and then being able to deliver what they want, and not necessarily just what you have, but what they want. Second that I would touch on would be around security of data, and we all know that's very important and paramount. And then third is excellence around the ecosystem. So as we look forward, being able to combine data from many different sources, or a little bit about what Nick talked about, that seamless experience. So you have a connected home and a connected vehicle. How do you combine them? And then I would say the fourth one for me would be around agility. So if you're able to offer different experiences throughout time and offer the consumer upgrades, I think that really has a big impact for them. And I think these are really important points for us to consider.
Very good. Charity. The automotive experience encompasses far more than what's directly within the vehicle. So in your view, as automotive lead for HERE Technologies, what innovation should we expect outside the vehicle that will impact the driver experience?
Thank you, Leslie. It's great to be here. And that's a really good question, because so much of the experience portion of the vehicle itself doesn't happen inside of the vehicle. A lot of things like technologies and location data and mapping, as an example, which are my world, lay a foundation for the experience that happens in the vehicle. And from a consumer experience perspective moving forward, infrastructure is going to be critical to the connected vehicle to ensure safety and automation. And the different types of infrastructures we're seeing on the horizon, in addition to location, are things like 5G, for example, or multi-access edge compute, MEC technology. These are critical trust enablers for systems like this, because we're evolving. The vehicles can now see the world around them. They need to assess their surroundings. They need to understand where they're going, and also interact with the driver to ensure that they make safe, efficient, and legal driving decisions.
Good. Nick, I want to ask you the same question. How do you foresee the evolution of an industry that is centered on experience? What are some of the cutting edge technologies that are going to drive the future of mobility?
Sure. You know, I'm fortunate enough to be part of the Experience Per Mile Advisory Council. I co-chair that council, and it's made up of 25 thought leaders, including those on the panel discussion today, that really bring unique perspectives. And we partner with SPD Automotive, along with these thought leaders, to think about ways that the future of mobility is going to continue to evolve. We recently published a white paper that talked about some of the key areas that are going to continue to transform the mobility industry, those being connected, autonomous, shared, and electrification. We believe those are major themes that will continue to transcend new business models and revenue streams, along with really putting the customer at the center of everything. When you look at technologies like 5G and artificial intelligence, that opens up a tremendous amount of opportunity. When you look at cloud, that certainly, and edge technology, that certainly also brings in tremendous opportunity. So when you bring all these things together, the ability to provide a connected, autonomous, shared, and electrified opportunity is something that is very real. With respect to connected, the notion that cars will leverage built-in two-way connectivity capabilities, whether it's vehicle to vehicle or vehicle to smart cities, for instance, and being able to have that processing technology empowered very quickly through 5G is very exciting. Autonomous, when you look at the opportunity for people to go from a level 3 to an autonomous vehicle, it opens up all avenues worth of experiences that you may not be able to have without autonomous. So, for instance, if I wanted to have a workforce on wheels, I was stuck in traffic, and I wanted to be able to do a video conference call like today, I'd be able to have the autonomous vehicle drive me safely while I'm conducting a conference room discussion with the combination of changing the lighting, the noise levels in the cabin, as well as enjoying the ability to collaborate. So with respect to shared, we know that we continue to see idle cars sitting, and that shared mobility in terms of how we best utilize the fleets through shared means. We believe that the combination of that, along with public transportation in smart cities, can really transform the industry. And then electrification, I don't have to go too much into electrification, but all the goodness that comes from electrification, including reduction in carbon footprint and emissions, and really, again, providing smart ways to transcend the industry. We believe all of these are really important items that will continue to evolve the mobile industry.
Oh, pretty good. Now let's move on to talk a little bit about building experiences. Now, unsurprisingly, building a tangible experience in the vehicle is incredibly complex. I mean, we just heard about some of the areas of CASE or ACES or however you want to call it that are going on right now. So, from delivering the hardware and software components to ensuring the application works in the real world, creating these solutions demands incredible innovation, partnership, and infrastructure. So let's talk about how we're navigating those dynamics and what needs to happen today in order to keep innovation high. My first question is for you, May. So May, a big part of building mobility experiences starts from within communities and the regional infrastructure. You're spearheading some pretty exciting technologies at Ford, from city solutions to various partnerships that take aim at solving mobility from a holistic community vantage point. How important is it to start the build, if you will, not just with technology, but with local municipalities and their needs in mind?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a passion point of ours because obviously we live in the context of a community. We don't just live on our own. We don't live in freeways that don't have connection points, but we live in communities, and increased urbanization, increased congestion is a real factor. So we really have to be able to address that in order to address the mobility journey. It also helps facilitate our roadmap to autonomous vehicles, which requires infrastructural adaptations and adjustments, such as availability of parking, specific lanes, etc. From an electrification perspective, the availability of charging stations along the journey is very critical. One of the many things that we are looking at is, let's say in London, where there is, obviously it's one of the largest cities in the world, highly congested. We started to look at what's that value proposition and the concept that Nick was talking about around sharing, right? There is generally, usually excess commodities. And if you think of parking as being a commodity, there are periods where there are excesses. It's just a party can't access it. So if you think about 9 to 5 on a residential block, most of the residents are commuting to work pre-COVID. And so those parking spaces are purchased by those residents, but they're not in them. On the other side of the equation, you've got commercial vans and trucks that need to make deliveries, that need to come in and do plumbing or electricity, and they need a place to park. And so what we have found out through our research is that many of those companies would either incur tickets and tolls because they would park illegally, and they would just have an allocation for that in their budget as a cost of doing business, or they would have two drivers, two people in the van, one to circle while the other goes and delivers or conducts the service. So there is a business opportunity that is a win-win in partnership with that city, with that municipality, to be able to act as a broker, to purchase those parking spaces or lease them from the residents during hours where the residents aren't using them, and broker the lease to a commercial party. That is solving a congestion problem, and it's solving a real-world problem for the commercial companies in cost reduction and better customer service. So, and we have many, many examples along those lines. So it's really about partnering with the cities and municipalities to uncover the pain points, uncover where you have excess, where you have demand, where you have supply, and being able to match that up and broker it in an effective way to add a net value.
Now, Bill, question for you. For all of these automotive innovations to function, they need to work together. So that means better connectivity, software, and cloud infrastructure. How well are these technologies working together right now?
If I took one of those at a time, Leslie, and we looked at connected, we would see that today globally about 48% of vehicles are connected, and by 2030, 96% will be connected. So first you have to have a connected vehicle. And then when we look at the future of 5G that Charity talked about and those opportunities, it only gets better. And then as we look at cloud, cloud is very important from the perspective that it's very scalable and you only pay for what you use. So it's a really great solution for connected vehicles and for moving into other parts of the enterprise of companies. So having a platform that companies can launch on is very important. And then when we look at software, so software is very important. But as I talked about earlier, agility and being able to create new versions of the software very quickly is important. So all of these are working today. It's just they have a great opportunity to work much better together in the future.
Okay. Charity. One of the most exciting and potentially life-saving experiences that we're starting to see hit the roads at scale is the capability for our vehicles to speak, in a sense, to their surroundings. So how will this technology evolve, and what hurdles stand in the way of that?
Yes, it's known as V2X. And one technology in particular, V2X or cellular V2X, is gaining a lot of momentum. In fact, we've seen a lot of really large automotive manufacturers sign up to support cellular V2X. And we're also seeing expanding membership with the 5G Automotive Association. It really makes me believe that we are going to head toward 5G cellular connectivity for our vehicles. Today, we're seeing an early glimpse of some of the benefits of that, things like self-parking or vehicle-to-pedestrian awareness. But tomorrow, this V2X technology is going to lay the foundation for autonomous vehicles. So it's very important that we get it right and that we get it right from the beginning. Regulatory factors will be an influence here, and I do suspect that we will see some hiccups. But regionally, as you look around the globe, it's really starting to gain momentum that we would leverage 5G for vehicles to communicate with one another as well as with their surroundings. From a HERE perspective, we see this journey in phases, and I think some folks on the panel already alluded to that. There's nice safety benefits right now, but as we look to that next phase, we'll start to interact with new concepts, things like vehicle to infrastructure communication, vehicle to network communication, vehicle to pedestrian communication. And the vehicles themselves are going to have a big component of location intelligence. So they know precisely where they are and what their path plan is as they head into the world of autonomy. And then as we get to full autonomous vehicles, orchestrating all of that communication among various vehicles so that we can build real-time scenarios of cities and roadways in motion becomes critical.
Understood. Now, I want to talk a little bit about implementing experience. Once we've defined and developed automotive experiences, the last but maybe longest step is implementation. Let's discuss how these often unconnected players, from OEMs and service providers to those who manage infrastructure and security, not only find partnerships to unveil new experiences, but monitor and manage them for the long term. So May, let's start with the most important stakeholder in that equation, the consumer. How important is consumer trust and adaptation to bring forth smart mobility and personalized experiences? How complex is that?
Wow, that is one of the highest significant challenges that we have. So let's address trust to begin with. At Ford, we aim to be the #1 most trusted mobility company in the world. The word trusted is in there for a reason, because it does require a large amount of trust, especially because we live in an era where our information is bought and sold every second of the day. And so consumers are very sensitive about their data that comes off of their vehicle. They view that as being very personal, their location especially. So the trust that the consumer puts into the OEM in order to allow the OEM to process that data and provide them back with digital products and services is a huge part of that equation. Without that trust, without customers opting in, then we cannot provide those services. We cannot improve warranty. We cannot improve the product. We cannot do apps. We cannot provide telematics to our fleet customers. Customers have to opt in. Every single country around the world has different rules around that. So from a technology perspective, from an OEM perspective, we have to understand that legal and regulatory landscape, and we have to earn it. And we have to implement the mechanisms that will allow us to gain that trust, to gain the consent, and to use that data responsibly. And techniques that we use is explicit opt-ins versus opt-outs. We anonymize data. We are respectful about how the data is used and when it's used. A tremendous amount of technology goes into guarding that data. All of those things that really takes armies of people in order to create and develop the systems and security networks around that goes into that trust factor. Because once you have that, you can really serve your customers better. From an adaptation perspective, this is really important. It's important for the customer to adapt to this, which we're finding that they are, right? They live in a digital world, but it's important for you as the service provider, to create products that they actually want to use and to be customer centric. That is the key to adaptation, is create something that the customer wants. And to do that, we do a lot of human-centered design. We will partner with, let's say, the LAPD and shadow them in police rides for months at a time to see how is it that they use their vehicle, what is important to them from a telematics perspective in terms of what gets streamed off, officer safety, citizen safety, etc., and really design solutions around real world needs versus being company centric and saying, what do I want to deliver to the customers? What pain point am I solving for the customer? If you're able to do that and gain their trust, then the adaptation comes fairly easily.
Okay. Now, speaking of being customer centric, Nick, I'd like you to weigh in on this. With this experience-led transformation upending the mobility industry, how is the consumer going to be impacted?
Well, I think the mobile industry's transformation presents a really unique opportunity to exceed the expectation of today's consumer. When you think about this seamless, frictionless, hyper-individual experience that you can provide, going from what we would traditionally look at from an RPM model to an experience per mile model, I think the consumer is really going to enjoy the ability to personalize the experience, and it's a combination of things. It won't be just one thing, whether that's just entertainment or social connection or health and well-being or productivity in the vehicle. It lends itself through a very integrated, smart, simple technology that provides a single pane of glass that really knows you and caters to your interests and individualism. So I think when you look at the personalization that can be had through artificial intelligence, analytics, along with providing a level of digital trust with the consumer, you open up a unique set of immersive experiences by doing this. I think about things like being able to order commerce through the car via voice with contactless curbside capabilities. I think those are things that we are looking at ways to give back time to those that are in vehicle, whether that again is a workforce on wheels type of concept or just want to relax and enjoy entertainment. We want to be able to customize and tailor those things to the end user and really put the customer at the center of those experiences. And the technology lends itself to be able to do that when we bring all of those components together, like cloud, like digital cockpit, like artificial intelligence, like 5G. All of those elements provide a really unique opportunity to bring these things together. It does take partnerships. There's no question that the need to be able to work together to elevate all of those innovative experiences will be through consortiums, through collaborations, and not through fragmentation or people building out their own ecosystem. I believe that bringing unique parts of the ecosystem together to advance the automotive industry is really where things are headed. And that's the way we'll be able to implement these experiences successfully, is to bring all of these elements and these best-in-class companies together to put the customer at the center of that experience.
Well, we know we're having all of these cool experiences in the car. That sort of raises a question in my mind about security. And security is probably, Bill, I'd like you to weigh in on this. Security is probably one of the most important aspects of mobility, especially as the world becomes more connected. What can automakers and technology players do to protect consumers and their experiences?
I think May did a really good job of answering a portion of this as she talked about trust, because that's what it really comes down to, is building that trust or having that trust. As we all know, the data that comes out of a vehicle is really important to our operations within OEMs and suppliers, as well as being able to monetize that valuable vehicle data and provide the experiences that we're talking about. So I can tell you firsthand that safety and security of the data is a foundational pillar and a top priority at AWS. So the first thing I highly recommend is that companies are working with companies that have that same top priority and recognize that and talk about it every day in this way. Providing these new enriched experiences requires that we have a shift in models, and that as we begin to use data from other sources, so from secondary and tertiary sources, it's very important that those are fully protected, anonymized type consumer data, and that we're thinking about that 100% of the time. So as I mentioned earlier, keeping vehicle features continually updated is really important. So over-the-air updates and how companies do that is very critical, and that they're making sure that that is very safe, and that the right software is getting delivered to the right vehicles in a timely manner. So although automotive companies and others want to consider the vehicle to be a mobile device on wheels, it is really important to recognize that lives are at stake. So collaboration in the industry for speed and freshness is important. And it creates that competitive advantage and that experience that we're talking about. However, these advantages will be short-lived if we cannot ensure that the data coming out and into the vehicle is protected and secured. And that's what we have to do as an automotive industry, is be completely committed as a top priority for this area.
Okay. Well, Charity, Bill brought up the whole idea of collaboration and partnerships, and I want to dig a little deeper into that. How important is it for all of the players to not just exist in the sandbox, but to contribute?
It's very important. I've just been listening to my colleagues out there describe different experiences, different technologies, different integration points, and quite frankly, listening to all of them, this cannot happen in a holistic manner without folks contributing to one another, innovating with one another, and working with the customer experience as the primary concern. In fact, I think real change will only occur at the point at which both automakers and mobility providers come together with the consumer at the center of it, just like we're doing on the Experiences Per Mile Advisory Council. If one corporation attempts to own this end-to-end process, what happens is that the experience for the end consumer suffers, and so does flexibility. And of course, there are many more important things. Bill alluded to security as well. These things require partnership, collaboration, and tight integrations.
Okay, and we have some questions that we're going to go to from our audience, but I did want to ask all of you one final question, and all of you feel free to weigh in. Imagine this experience-led transformation happens seamlessly and successfully in the automotive space. What will this future look like? Who wants to start? How about you, Nick? Can you give us your view on that?
Well, sure, certainly can share my own personal aspiration for what I view as a unique scenario that maybe others can relate to. But I think about a unique connected experience that's integrated and seamless, like coming off of a tough day at the office. I get in the car, I put my seatbelt on, and there's sensors in the seatbelt, along with its knowledge of my packed calendar, and my heart rate knows that it's been a stressful day. The car suggests that it should take over the driving autonomously, and offers noise canceling cabin experience, dimming the cabin light and putting some soothing music on, maybe even a little aromatherapy. And then it reminds me on the way home that it's my anniversary. and that it can order flowers and be ready for curbside pickup along with maybe a meal from my favorite restaurant. I'm able to pick those things up while still enjoying a relaxing drive. And then a half a mile out from the house, it deactivates the security alarm in the house. It sets and dims the lights. It adjusts the temperature. It transfers the music that I was listening to into the house. And then it turns on the oven to warm the oven so that I could put this meal that I just picked up for me and my significant other. And that for me is a seamless, frictionless, intelligent experience. And it wraps up what ends up being a wonderful evening. So that's my view, personal view, and I have many, many others, but that's what we work on in terms of making that a reality every day.
Bill, weigh in on that question about what we're going to see in the future?
Yes, I love how Nick phrased that. I could not have phrased it any better. But in summary, it's that frictionless experience. It's personalized. It's anticipatory. It anticipates your needs before you have thought of it, and it's completely connected to the ecosystem. The scenario that Nick described is where the car is connected to your productivity tools, such as your calendar is connected to your home IoT, and everything works together very seamlessly so that you, the customer, are at the heart of it. You're getting a personalized service that makes your life better.
Terrific. I'm going to right now take a couple of questions that have come to us from Slido. And anyone who wants to weigh in on this, please feel free. The question here is, what do you think the pandemic has impacted the CX expectations of the average driver? Does anybody want to take that one? COVID's such a big topic right now.
Okay,
Charity.
I'll weigh in just a little bit. I think our world of commuting has changed quite a bit. There's been a couple of trends we've seen in our business. One is that we can't rely on the tools of yesterday. In other words, everything has to be fresh in real time. We have to understand the traffic pattern from today because it's probably very different than it was some time ago. We also need to understand our transportation options as you head into urban areas. We're still going to have a journey that's multifaceted. It may involve some walking, it may involve a train, it may involve a car. And while we're seeing a lean toward personal vehicles right now, I think for social distancing reasons, people still have to go into urban centers and coordinate that experience seamlessly. So I think that live and real-time data, that fresh experience is something consumers need, especially today more than ever.
Now, this is along the same lines of we're still talking about the pandemic. What are the panelists' views on the impact of the pandemic on the future of shared solutions? Is it a speed bump or a fundamental permanent shift away from shared mobility? You know what? We hear a lot of talk about people being skittish about this.
Yeah, it's really hard to tell if this is going to be a temporary or a permanent shift, but we are seeing a shift. For example, there is a rise in folks wanting to buy cars, right? So we were seeing kind of plateaus, and now there's a rise because they are more skittish about using shared mobility. We deal with a lot of car rental companies, and we saw our subscriptions to digital services for our large fleets, with Avis, etc., plateau quite a bit early in COVID, but now we're seeing a massive uptick because people are wanting to rent cars to go on vacations. People are flying less, driving more. Therefore, that requires the ability to have a vehicle, and they don't, they're flying less, they're using trains less, etc. So we are seeing the personal use of a vehicle, whether it's via a rental or via a purchase, increase for recreational purposes. Now, again, our memory's short. Will this be a lasting change? I think time will tell.
Great. And speaking of time, I think we have time for just one more question. And whoever wants to weigh in on this, feel free. I'm not going to. Does all of this mean the end for those of us who truly enjoy the actual driving experience.
Oh, that's still a big part of a lot of people's identity, and it's a huge hobby. People enjoy everything vehicle related. People enjoy driving for driving's sake, and that will never go away. There will still be a significant segment of the population that really enjoys driving, and for that, we have experiences around that. Performance apps for Mustang owners, for example, that are really interested in that performance aspect of it. Social networks for hobbyists of vehicles. That's a really critical kind of a part of our culture. And I personally think it's certainly here to stay because it's an enjoyment aspect. It brings joy to people.
Wonderful. That's a perfect way to end. I want to thank all of you, Nick, Mary, Bill, and Charity. And let's toss it right back to Rod. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What a great discussion. I want to thank everyone on the panel for their valuable insight. Before we sign off, I want to update you on a couple of broadcast happenings in the near future. APA will be having a fireside chat with Jose Munoz, Global CEO of Hyundai Motor Company, on November 9th at 1 p.m. To register, you can visit their site at automotivepressassociation.net. SAA will be hosting their 5th Annual Innovation Summit webinar on November 18th at 10 a.m. featuring Matt Chen, Chief Technology Officer at General Motors. More information can be found off their homepage at saaauto.com. Lastly, our Queued Up Mobility series is now taking shape through the first quarter of next year. We'll be updating our website daily with information and emailing you about upcoming remotecasts. To see our calendar events, you can visit nais.com/queued-up for all the latest information. Thanks for your time today. We'll talk to you again in November.